Parents and teachers have noticed that kids today are struggling to think critically, and many people have blamed AI for this. They've blamed AI for an increase in cheating and a decrease in writing skills. But in today's episode, we're going to discuss what's really going on, and by the end of the episode, you'll realize that AI is not the root cause of the problem. It runs much deeper than that and has to do with our education system and the way that it's set up. My name is Josh, and this is Engineering a Better Education. I'm glad that you're joining me today, and we're going to talk about a topic that is really hot on the presses, and it answers the question, what is AI doing to our kids today? If you're my age or older, I mean, really anybody who's an adult didn't grow up with the access to AI technology, these large language model chatbots that our students have access to today. And we've noticed how having access to AI has changed the education landscape, and it's changed the way that students are approaching homework and schoolwork, and it's changing a lot of aspects about our society. And as I mentioned, some people are afraid that access to AI is causing an increase in cheating, causing a decrease in writing skills, and there have been a few cases where AI has been blamed for more serious matters, such as cases of suicide that have occurred. And what I want to share today and what I learned from a young age is that technology accelerates the path that we're already on and maintains the trajectory that we are on and that we've input into the technology. I was taught that whenever searching things or looking at things on the internet, whatever I decide to look at and search for, that I will get more of. The algorithm that determines the things that we see on the internet looks at what we've done in the past and tries to give us more of what we spent our time on. And AI is really similar in the sense that the inputs that we give into a large language model chatbot are what we receive back out, or at least a mirrored version of it. So what that means is that AI does not turn an honest student into a cheater. It doesn't take a student who wants to learn how to write and who wants to create and write on their own and turn them into a lazy student who doesn't write. It also doesn't take a positive, happy conversation and turn it into something depressing and negative. If you spent any time with ChatGPT or any of these popular large language models, you'll know that the tone and the words that you put into the chatbot are similar to the tone and the words that you get out. So what that means is that if students are using AI to cheat, it means they probably already wanted to cheat before AI was available. And what AI does is it makes it easier to cheat. And it makes it easier to get by without developing real writing skills. And because, you can feed it into the chatbot, it can write your essay for you, and basically do all the work for you. I want to share a quick story of something that I've learned at my work. I am on the manufacturing side of engineering. And so previously in my last role, I was sustaining a product line that develops medical devices. What that means is that I basically oversee a manufacturing process and respond to issues as they'd come up on the line. And this manufacturing line uses human assemblers to perform a specific step in assembling a medical device, and they would receive the device from the previous station, perform their work on it, and pass it to the next station, and repeat that over and over throughout the day. So as you can imagine, there are some problems that arise sometimes. If one of these human operators is not properly trained, they might make some mistakes, which would cause some issues with the medical device later on the line. And you've also got situations where an operator may need to use the bathroom, so they'll step off the line, go use the bathroom, come back. And so what's the effect of that on the whole rest of the manufacturing line? because a manufacturing line is designed to flow continuously so that the devices, or in this case, the medical devices that we're building, can continuously flow through the line. So there's a process in manufacturing called lean, and it refers to leaning out or removing all the waste from your manufacturing process. Every manufacturing process and every process in general has some inherent waste in it. One example of this is if you commute to work every day, part of the wasted part of your workday is commuting. It doesn't really add value to your workday. I mean, I guess you could argue if you drive through a beautiful scenic valley every day, that could add value to your life. But from a work perspective, the commute is more or less wasted time where you have to sit in traffic and get to your destination, and then same thing to get back home after work. So in your process of going to work or your process of working, the commute would be considered waste. So in this lean process that we did at work, so I watched this happen to some of our manufacturing lines. We identified a lot of the wastes and attempted to remove them from our manufacturing process. And one way that we identified the wastes was by encouraging the operators to do what we call single piece flow. And single piece flow means that the operators only work on one single medical device at a time. This might seem kind of obvious, like what else could you do other than work on one? Well, the opposite of single piece flow is batching. And batching means that, let's say, your job at the station is to input 4 screws into a handle shell and then glue a connector piece onto this handle. So if you were doing single piece flow, you would take one device as it gets done from the previous station, you would put your 4 screws into it, glue the connector on, and then pass it to the next station. If you were batching, what you might do is wait until there were a few devices ready for you from the previous station, grab them, put the screws in one, take the next one, put the screws in, take the next one, put the screws in, and then grab the connector, glue it onto one, glue it onto the second one, glue it onto the third one, and then pass a batch of 3 to the next station. And this is surprisingly common. Our operators want to do this sort of thing sometimes. And the reason, one of the reasons at least, is that it hides the true issues that are going on in the manufacturing line. It hides the wastes, actually, because you get a big buffer coming in with each batch. So you might be waiting for a little while because if the person before you is batching, there's no work to do, and then all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of work to do. And so you go through, assemble your devices, pass them on to the next station. And this is popular, for example, if you want to take a break and use the bathroom, you might feel tempted to batch up a whole bunch of devices before you. So really what you're doing is you're making the person who is at the station after you wait ahead of time for you to batch so that you can hand it off to them, run to the bathroom, come back, you see that they're still working, and you feel like, oh, it didn't have any impact to the line when I left because they're still working on the devices I passed to them. But really it's just shifting that waiting time to a different period in time before you left. And there are a lot of inefficiencies and wastes that can be hidden by this batching process. So operators a lot of times are tempted to batch, and when we tell them to do single piece flow, they feel uncomfortable because they want it to look like the line is flowing perfectly. And this is a whole interesting thing because it's not their responsibility to make sure the manufacturing line is balanced. That actually falls on the manufacturing engineers. That would fall on me in this case. But another important aspect of a manufacturing line is that every station takes approximately the same amount of time. So if it takes you 2 minutes to put those screws in and glue the connector on, you would hope that the station right before that also takes approximately 2 minutes, and the station right after that also takes approximately 2 minutes. But let's say the station before you takes 5 minutes, then you're going to spend a lot of time waiting every time. And you're going to wait 5 minutes, get a device, work on it for 2, and then you're going to be waiting for an additional 3 minutes before you get the next device. So If the station that's slow batches things up, then they can hand off a whole bunch to you at a time, and it kind of feels like you get to work for a while. And if an engineer comes out to the line, they see, a constant flow of work going on, and it makes it look like that station's not slow. And the operator working at the slow station probably doesn't want to feel like they're the bottleneck of the manufacturing line. But if we're trying to identify waste, that's something that we need to know, because we can rebalance the stations and break up the work in a way that's split more evenly. So the point of this is that batching hides the wastes and the true issues that are going on. And when we switch to single piece flow, it uncovers those issues, and sometimes it makes it seem like our manufacturing line got worse. But the truth is, it didn't get worse. We didn't change anything about the workload at each station. We just made the problems more obvious and more apparent. And AI is similar to this example of batching and single piece flow. AI exposes the issues that were already present. So as I mentioned, if students want to cheat, they now have an easier way to do it using AI. If students don't want to write their own essay, their own unique work, AI now makes it really easy to not write and to get away with it. AI did not change the inherent character of those students or those people. They already had a desire to cheat, or they already had a desire to not write on their own, but now they have a means to do it where they can achieve it more easily. So what AI is doing is similar to that example of single piece flow in manufacturing. AI is exposing the weak points in our education system. It's exposing the underlying problems that are sometimes hidden from view. So in a sense, we should be grateful that this technology is pointing some of these things out, because if students don't feel motivated to do homework, to work, and to learn, then there really is a problem with our education system. And it could be easy to just say, bar all access to AI and large language models because we don't want students cheating, so we're going to take away the resource that makes cheating easy. But if we want to address the true underlying problem, then we need to figure out why students have that behavior and that desire to cheat and address the true root cause. Because AI is an incredible tool that can enhance learning for all students. If we knew that all students were honest and willing to put in the work that was needed to learn, for example, how to write, it takes a lot of practice to learn how to write, and you have to write a lot of things, essays, a book, whatever. And if students understand that process and are willing to put in that work, and they're using AI to critique their work and help them generate ideas, they're going to be a much better writer than a student who doesn't have access to that additional resource. So the answer is not to bar access to AI tools. The answer is to figure out what's really causing these poor and destructive behaviors and address the root cause directly. And what is that root cause? The root cause is that the education system is not teaching students to think critically. It's teaching students to get the right answer. And this comes from the way our grading system is set up and the way that we motivate students at school. When I was a young learner, all the way back to my elementary school days, my mom was really involved with my education. And anytime I had homework, I would bring it home, I would complete my homework, and my mom would actually review it before I took it back to school, which was really great in a lot of ways. She would, for example, if I had some math problems, she would review them and she would essentially grade it for me. She would say, you got number 8 wrong, you got number 12 wrong, and number 15. Go take another look at those. And that would tell me that everything else was right. And I would go take a look at those problems that I got wrong. And she actually wouldn't tell me what was wrong with them, which was really great. I would go look at those problems, figure out what was wrong, rework them, and give my homework back to my mom. And she would just repeat this process until everything was correct. And like I said, this had some really nice benefits. I learned and got one-on-one feedback from her grading my assignments. But it also had an interesting effect, which is I got used to seeing 100% on every single assignment because my mom would review it and tell me which problems I had wrong. So by the time I got to school, it had already been reviewed and polished and fixed up, and I would turn it in, and I would get 100% on almost every single homework assignment in elementary school. And I would not have gotten that if my mom did not review my homework. So it built this expectation within me to get 100% all the time. And once I got like junior high age, high school, my mom didn't review my homework anymore. That was just something that happened when I was younger. And so sometimes I would take it hard on myself if I didn't get 100% on an assignment. And I think part of that is because I was so used to that as a young kid. And I was used to getting the right answer. And that's kind of what motivated me in school, was to get the right answer, to get 100%, to get an A. And I know that I'm not the only student who's felt that way. And what should really be motivating our students is the chance to explore and discover and learn. I'm at a point in my life now, I'm out of school, I'm done with college, but I get really excited about exploring, discovering, learning. I love to watch educational videos on YouTube. And of course, if you're watching YouTube, there's no quiz at the end, there's no grade, there's no right answer. You're not looking for a right answer. You're just looking for information. You're looking for a solution to a problem, an answer to a question. And that in itself feels rewarding when you get that answer, when you get that information, that solution. And that's what we need to see more of in our education system. And you can't cheat that. You can't cheat that process of discovery and research. You can cheat getting the right answer, but you can't cheat learning. So if we restructure our education system so that the focus is on that learning and growth and development, there won't be a way to cheat. And so students aren't going to use AI to cheat like we are now, seeing now, to get the right answer. And I think that a lot of students suffer from fear of getting the wrong answer also. There was a class that I took in college. It was my biomechanics class. And this was a really neat class. I loved learning about matrix algebra and learning about the different ways to model tissues within the body and different materials. So honestly, I loved the math aspect of it, thought it was really fascinating, really interesting. But I suffered from a lot of fear of getting the wrong answer in this class. And that's because I think there were only 6 homework assignments and then 3 exams probably. And so each homework assignment, relative to the way your grade was calculated, carried a lot of weight. And I noticed early on that the graders in this class were really particular, really picky about the way your work looked. And I've always enjoyed math, and I enjoy the process of discovering the answer, the solution to the problem. And in this class, there were sometimes multiple ways to approach a problem, multiple ways to think about it and to show your work. And for whatever reason, I don't know the graders who were grading the assignments in this class, but they had a rubric that would show one way how to solve the problem. And if you did anything besides that one way, they would mark off a lot of points on your grade. And they allowed you to submit regrade requests. And I was the type of student who never submitted a regrade request until this class. And this class, I actually would submit a regrade request with every single assignment, because I would come back and I'd have a really low score. And I would look, my answer would match the same answer that was on the rubric, the answer key. And it would just follow a slightly different logic flow and use completely valid math. I swear this is the thing that happened. And I would need to submit a regrade request all the time and explain my method of thinking, my reasoning. And then generally after the regrade request, I would get the points for that problem, and my homework score would go up significantly. And it was really frustrating for me because I wanted to get this good grade in this class and I really enjoyed this class, but I would experience a lot of fear and dread with the homework because I would be trying to guess and figure out exactly what they were looking for on the grading rubric. When I'd be solving a problem, I would stop and think, should I approach it this way or this way? Which one's going to be on the answer rubric? And from a practical standpoint, it really didn't matter which way I approached it, and I should choose the one that kind of intuitively made sense to me. But I would get stuck and hung up on this, and it made the class a lot less fun, actually. I would get really stressed about the homeworks, and it's unfortunate to talk about that story and to realize that was going on. And I know that that's not the only class that this is happening in, not the only school. I'm not the only student who's feeling that. There are a lot of students who fear getting the wrong answer, who fear making a mistake. And the way our education system is set up, it doesn't reward mistakes and it doesn't reward learning from our mistakes. Every mistake is just a dock off your score. It's missed points. When in reality, the way that we learn best is by learning from our mistakes. The way that people discover new information and do research is by repeatedly making mistakes and finding out what doesn't work and learning and growing from each of those opportunities. And that's the root cause for this problem of cheating, of not wanting to do the homework, not wanting to go to school, is because a lot of these students are living in fear of making a mistake. They're living in fear of getting the wrong answer. And we've built a system that rewards getting the right answer. And it doesn't necessarily reward the critical thinking process, the mistakes that we have to go through to eventually arrive at a conclusion, at an answer. So fundamentally, AI is not the problem. It's not causing students to begin cheating. Well, maybe it's giving them the confidence to try it, but it's not causing the desire to cheat. It's not rewiring their brains and changing their behavior. The fact is, students have wanted to cheat for a long time. And I really hope that there are a lot of students still who honestly and genuinely want to learn and want to act ethically. And I believe there are a lot of students. I wanted to be ethical in all my studies as a student and genuinely wanted to learn. And I know that there are a lot of students like that. But we can help more students become that way if we show them the joy and the excitement of learning and education. And that's only going to come from removing the fear and the dread of getting the wrong answer and encouraging students to explore and discover on their own. So we've identified the root problem. It is that the education system is set up to focus more on getting the right answer than on learning and growing and developing. So what's the answer to this problem? The answer is to encourage curiosity-driven learning. What is curiosity-driven learning? It means that we motivate students to pursue their curiosities, remove the fear of failure, and allow students to make mistakes without them feeling like it's something bad or there's something wrong with them or they've underperformed. We remove that fear, let them make mistakes, and let them explore and learn about the things that they're interested in learning about. And this is difficult to achieve within the education system, but if you as an individual are interested in learning about engineering and developing your STEM skills, then I want to make sure you know about my coaching program called Design a Product People Want. And in this coaching program, I do exactly what it sounds like. I help students that are high school, teenage, develop and design a product that people want. We start by identifying a problem that they're passionate about solving, and then we innovate a solution to that problem, and then iterate prototypes of that solution until it works well. And finally, I help them gain the confidence to sell or share their work with the people who want their product. And the fun thing about this is that the students are driving the design process. I'm not telling them what problem to solve. I'm not telling them what topic they're passionate about. They're driving this project forward. I teach them a step-by-step process that is used by real engineers. It's the gold standard in my industry. And I help them know exactly what the next step is in this process and how they can succeed. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching program, click on the link in the description below, and you can fill out a form there where I will get in touch with you and teach you more about the program and help you know if it would be a right fit for you or your student. There are a lot of ways to approach this curiosity-driven learning. One is perhaps to hire a coach or a mentor that will teach you or your student the things that you're passionate about. Another is to use these AI tools to help you explore, discover, and learn about the things you're passionate about. But in any case, I think it all starts with identifying a problem that is worth solving, a problem that you're passionate about solving. And for that reason, I want to give you a free gift today. There is a second link in the description that you can click on that will allow you to download a PDF workbook that I've put together called Identify a Problem Worth Solving. And it'll walk you through a step-by-step process that will take you from having no idea what kind of project you want to work on to narrowing it down to one specific problem that is worth solving. And note that I'm not talking about a solution here yet, because good engineering starts with identifying a real problem without worrying about whether you can come up with a good solution to it, without knowing what the solution is ahead of time. You start with the problem, and you will be able to come up with an effective and worthwhile solution to this problem, especially if you follow the design process outlined in my coaching program. But regardless of that, if you're determined enough, you will find a solution to this problem. So I encourage you to check out that workbook that I've put together. It takes about 2 hours if you follow all the steps that I've laid out to solidly identify this problem worth solving. And that's the first step in this curiosity-driven process. You need to figure out what you want, what you care about. I think there are too many students who've never been asked, what do you want to learn? They probably wouldn't even know how to answer that question because no one's asked it to them before, and they haven't sat down and taken the time to think, what do I care about? What do I want to learn? Once again, if you look at that workbook, it's going to walk you through that exercise and help you get that outcome, understanding what you really want to learn. And then you have all the resources in the world to help you. We live in the best age there's ever been for education. You can learn whatever you want, and you can learn it for free on the internet. You also have access to coaches that you can hire that will teach you things quickly that will relate with your learning style and essentially help to speed along that process. So I encourage you to figure out what really motivates you, what do you want to learn, and to let go of that fear of getting the wrong answer. If you've ever felt trapped by grades and felt fear of failure, I want you to know that grades are not everything, and it's okay to make mistakes. And especially as we're learning, those mistakes are excellent learning opportunities for us. I hope that you've enjoyed being with me today and listening. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I appreciate everyone who's supporting this channel and this podcast. And if you have enjoyed today's episode, I encourage you to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I look forward to talking to you next time. Have a great one.